Hello everyone, my name is Evan and I like to make stop-motion dinosaurs and monsters. And now that a Jurassic Rebirth mutant T.Rex is done, I'm happy to say Rexy is now on the way, I do say. The cloning process of Rexy has now started today, and the first order of business, I say, is making Rexy's skeleton, I do say. And as I craft away using some aluminum armature wire today, and some oven-baked bones for clay, and some tinfoil to save some weight, you could say, I'll be going over this T-Rex's full story today. So welcome one and all to my clay Jurassic Park, and this special long-awaited Jurassic Park video of mine. So let's go over the Tyrannosaurus of the Jurassic, the one and only Rexy. Now, unfortunately, I think her story may be approaching an end after her final success of happiness in Jurassic World Dominion. And one could say she's not exactly a spring chicken anymore, pun intended. But seeing how she's an old girl now, I figured it would make a perfect topic for today, I do say. And be sure to stomp on that subscribe button as hard as a dinosaur so you can learn more about Rexy, the queen of the dinosaurs. Long live the queen. Now, the beginning of Rexy's story begins a long time ago, approximately 65 million years ago in the late Cretaceous period, which technically is her direct descendant. And unfortunately, this Tyrannosaurus came face to face with a Giganotosaurus, where they then engaged in a battle to the death. And unfortunately for our beloved Tyrannosaurus, the Giganotosaurus was victorious. However, a mosquito landed on the dying Tyrannosaurus and then proceeded to drink its blood. This very same mosquito would then be caught later in tree sap and then preserved for many millions of years before being discovered in the year 1987 by InGen. And this mosquito was used to create what we now know as Rexy, which brings us to her hatching in 1988 within the InGen compound of Isla Sorna, and we were able to see this compound in the Jurassic World Dominion movie in the year of 1986. She spent the first year of her life in the lab being taken care of, where she was then transported off to Isla Nublar to be one of the very first and main attractions of Jurassic Park. It was also mentioned that her paddock was designed for a juvenile species to live amongst her. However, no juvenile was ever transported from Sorna to Nublar, and Rexy remained the only Tyrannosaurus on Isla Nublar. Rexy lived out her years from 1989 to 1993, where unfortunately not a lot is known about what she got up to, so we can assume that she casually lived out her life in the product, up until 1993, where the events of Jurassic Park finally occur. Rexy was a no-show on the first park tour, in which we had the main characters Grant and Malcolm. Ray Arnold tried to lure her out with some food, but there's just one problem with that. She's a T-Rex. A T-Rex doesn't want to be fed, it wants to hunt. And once again, pun intended. As the hours roll by and a storm approaches the island, then we all know, well, Dennis Nedry decides to switch off the power to the park, including the one of Rexy's exhibit. And well, the rest is cinematic history. Rexy breaks out of her new exhibit and explores her newfound territory. The next day, all that's known is that she eats a gallimimus, and she killed at least 2 of the velociraptors within the visiting center at the end of the Jurassic Park movie. The next 2 movies, Jurassic Park Lost World and Jurassic Park 3, did not feature this Tyrannosaurus. However, we hear during the 1994 cleanup on Isla Nublar showed that the sick Triceratops was dead, with a big Tyrannosaurus Rex bite mark in it, suggesting that Rexy probably had a nice easy meal. Our next incident with Rexy was on April 19th, 2002, where Vic Hoxton's crew within the InGen Security Division encountered Rexy on Isla Nublar, preparing for the creation of the Jurassic World. She was then later captured by the team and placed into captivity, where there she resigned within the T-Rex Kingdom, which we see in 2015 in Jurassic World. Jurassic World officially opened in 2005. Rexy lived her days for 10 plus years, being fed and hunting animals within her kingdom, where it wasn't until 2015 where Claire Deering led her out of the exhibit to attempt to take down the Indominus Rex during the events of the Jurassic World movie. After this fight, in which she almost lost her life, Rexy then left to reset her journey on Isla Nublar once more, where we last see her roaring across the park of Jurassic World, to prove once again that she is the true queen of Isla Nublar. Next up during Camp Cretaceous Season 2, in early 2016, it is confirmed in the first episode that her canonical name is Rexy, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, where we see her building a nest within her kingdom, as well as hunting down a Parasaurolophus in early stages of Season 2. She then went into battle on Main Street once more, but this time she was hunting down Sammy, Darius, Mitch, and Tiff. She was then soon distracted by a hologram of herself on Main Street before realizing it was a trick. She then eventually walked off without harming any of the characters. She then came back later on in the season to chase down a herbivore herd, and then later killing Mitch, who was dangling from a tree. Not a lot is known about what happened in the extra 4 months leading up to Camp Cretaceous Season 3. However, her appearances in this season connect up to Fallen Kingdom's prologue intro. Just before the events of Fallen Kingdom's intro, we learn that there are more mercenaries arriving onto the island. They attempted to rescue the campers before Rexy arrived onto the dock, killed a mercenary and almost the others. She then chased down Yaz, Brooklyn, and Darius before being distracted by Jack the Yellow Jacket Man, where it then almost lines up perfectly to Fallen Kingdom's intro. That takes place in 2016. June 2016, in fact. Her next known appearance is in 2018, in the VR Experience game, which is canon. She is seen fighting a Baryonyx as well as Blue the Velociraptor once more, just before Wheatley's crew arrives on Isla Nublar. She is then seen running away, where minutes later, whilst Mount Sibo is erupting, she saves Owen by attacking a Carnotaurus, brutally killing the meat-eating bull. She then flees in the area. Later in the movie, she in fact got captured and was airlifted onto the Arcadia. She was then asleep on the boat where Claire and Owen woke her up in an attempt to resample her blood for Blue. After killing a goat arriving into the Lockwood Manor, her next appearance was then when all the dinosaurs broke out of the manor. And at the end of the movie, we see that Rexy comes face to face with the king of the jungle, which happens to be a lion within the California Zoo. Whilst this is the end of the Fallen Kingdom movie, the story does actually continue via the Jurassic World motion comics, with the episode named The Roar That Rules Them All. Now that's epic. And within this episode, Rexy breaks into the zoo and is almost captured after evading the zoo staff's attempts. She then escapes into the forest, never to be seen again until 2021. In 2021, we get the events of the Jurassic World short film, known as Jurassic World: The Prologue. During the modern day era, in the prologue, Rexy is being hunted down by the DFW before she runs into and ruins moviegoers at the drive-thru cinema. After that, evading failed attempts at being captured, she then gets away. Later, in Jurassic World Dominion, it is revealed by Ramsey Cole that Biosyn has captured the Tyrannosaurus Rex, meaning the same one from 1993's Jurassic Park, aka our beloved Rexy. There is also a few Tyrannosaurus reports, videos, and images on the Dino Tracker website that states Rexy has been traveling across California, causing multiple disruptions, as well as coming across an Apatosaurus herd, and eventually losing that battle. Her next appearance was in 2022, in which she was being transported to the Biosyn Sanctuary. She sees a dead deer deer that was earlier killed by the Therizinosaurus and decides to have it as a quick and easy snack. Not before the Giganotosaurus arrives and battles Rexy for that meal. Rexy deems the deer not valuable enough, so walks away from that battle. After this, she stays within the sanctuary before all the animals were ordered by Brain Implant to take cover under the facility. There, Rexy and the Giganotosaurus came into conflict once more, and Rexy is almost immediately overpowered and knocked unconscious before Kilowatts fires a flare which lands right by the Therizinosaurus, distracting the Giganotosaurus and giving the older dinosaur time to recover. Rexy then joins forces with the Therizinosaurus to defeat the larger predator, then pushes the Giganotosaurus into the massive claws of this herbivore, impaling the Giganotosaurus, killing it almost immediately. And then finally, at the film's conclusion, Rexy is seen at the Biosyn Sanctuary, standing alongside two other Tyrannosaurus Rexes, eventually finding a family of her very own. These two Tyrannosaurus Rexes happen to be none other the Tyrannosaurus Rexes Buck and Doe from Isla Sorna, seen in the Lost World Jurassic Park. And there we have it, the entire story of the Jurassic Park Rexy, the world's first cloned Tyrannosaurus Rex, all the way from the Cretaceous area to July 2022. It's definitely been incredible to watch Rexy grow up and become the veteran that she is today. Within the franchise, a well-known and beloved dinosaur amongst all of us. She would technically now be around 37 years of age. Well, unfortunately, I think her time is, well, numbered with us, given the fact that, well, the average T-Rex is lucky to live about 30 years. But I'll be honest, I personally don't care that much, and I sure do hope we see her again. But what do you think? Would you like to see Rexy in the upcoming movie, The Jurassic World Rebirth? And is she your favorite dinosaur? Let me know in the comments below. And quick fun fact, her original stage name was Roberta. That was the name given to the Pacific animatronic that acted as her in the 1993 original film. However, her in-universe canonical name is Rexy. If you just so happen to enjoy this video today, be sure to stomp on that like button as hard as Rexy today. And be sure to comment below what you think of this dinosaur skeleton so far. And be sure to share this video with your monster and dinosaur loving friends. And feel free to subscribe to the channel today if you just so happen to be new here today, because all your support is appreciated, I do say. And I hope you all have a fantastic day. And be sure to stay tuned for more dinosaur updates heading your way. Because with Rexy Part 1 now done, the next part of the cloning process of Rexy, I say, is adding this dinosaur's flesh, I do say, aka plasticine clay, where one could say this dinosaur will become more than just a skeleton that day. So be sure to have your post notifications turned on today, because soon Rexy will be stomping in your way. Well, we'll be learning more about this dinosaur and Jurassic Park along the way. So if that just so happens to tickle your fancy today, I hope you've already hit that subscribe button, I say, because this channel is now on the road to 8K. Which is kind of exciting, I do say, so I'd like to thank you all today for all the love and support you have shown along the way. And on a slightly less poetic note, well, I just want to thank you all a lot because, again, I'm kind of surprised that things have been taken off as well as they have been. So yeah, you're the reason I keep working very hard and producing these stop motion animation cartoons as well as making these sculpting projects. So again, thank you all very much. That means the world to me, and I'm glad I can be a part of your day as well as inspiration for you all fellow animators and sculptors. So yeah, keep crafting. So for my fellow animators and sculptors out there, be sure to comment below what you're working on today, because I'm kind of curious to see what you're all working on, I say. And or you could @ me in one of your videos. It's a pretty much guaranteed that I'm going to check it out at that point, so yeah. Little tip for you all. But now that our finishing touches are nearly done on our Rexy today, it's time for the build rundown, I do say. So in this video today, we went over on how to make a T-Rex skeleton, I say, making our clay Rexy clone one step closer to being alive today. But the materials used during this project today includes oven-baked clay to make the bones, you could say, and some tinfoil to save on that clay, and some aluminum armature wire for most of the base, you could say, and just a little bit of plasticine clay to help her stand upright today. So the next order of business that'll be heading Rexy's way is getting that skull all painted up, I do say. And then once that's done, it's on to the plasticine sculpting fun, where we'll add the first layer of clay and then some muscle toning, you could say. And then once Rexy is good and jacked, we'll be adding some light camouflage striping across her back. And that's the build rundown for today, and the cloning process of Rexy that'll soon be heading your way. Now I just have one last question for you all to ponder today. Who do you think would win in a battle? The D-Rex or the T-Rex? And with that statement there, I pretty much gave away exactly why I'm making Rexy. I think that mutant's gonna have to be put in its place. Long live the Queen! Hello everyone, my name is Evan and I like to make stop-motion dinosaurs and monsters. And on Project Rexy today, I gotta say, today is a good day cause I'm adding clay to my Tyrannosaur day. The first thing we need to get done is some painting fun, and then once that's out of the way, we'll be adding layers of plasticine clay to Rexy today. And as I craft away, we'll be talking about all the Tyrannosaur Day from the Jurassic Park franchise today, I do say. So hello ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're having a fantastic day, and welcome back to another Jurassic video. Lately we have been changing the topics of discussion on this channel recently, seeing how the Rebirth of Jurassic World is on the way, aka Jurassic World Rebirth the movie, which is coming out this summer. And I feel like we have a good base now to understand the entire lore of Jurassic World and Park. So today we have another lore-filled Jurassic World video, I do say, where we'll be discussing and going over every single Tyrannosaurus Rex that we know of in the Jurassic Park and World franchise. And be sure to subscribe today if you're new to this channel, I say. Because, well, once Rexy is done, I'm hoping to have an actual animation out before the movie comes out, so race is on. And let's set, well, a slight like goal this time. Seeing how Rexy Part 1 didn't do so well, unfortunately, let's aim for at least 20 likes. And seeing how a lot of you seem to be really digging the shorts with her, I don't think that's entirely implausible. So be sure to smash that like button as hard as Rexy today, I do say. Now, I should say that this movie will be based off movie canon only. And I've been taking notes on multiple sources of canonical information, such as the movies, shows, and even websites. There's definitely plenty to pick from, so be sure to grab a goat-sized snack and enjoy this video today and sit back and relax. Because here is the entirety of the Tyrannosaurus Rex species within the Jurassic saga. The saga's known Rexes are some of the most memorable creatures in movie history, but a big question remains: how many were there exactly? Now, well, there isn't exactly one definitive answer, but originally it was thought that 7 Tyrannosaurus rexes had been bred on Isla Sorna. That's according to the Trespasser video game, although it's not looked into very much. Because its storyline doesn't exactly affect the main timeline, it is still technically considered canon in a way for the most part, because no official management has discredited it via future installments like Jurassic Park the game was. And it also has never been announced that it is no longer considered canon. But I think it's safe to assume the dialogue within this game is considered canon for the most part. So I'm going to quote a piece of dialogue from that game. The quote is spoken by John Hammond, which is voiced by Richard Attenborough, where he states that there were 7 Tyrannosauruses bred on Isla Sorna originally. The quote goes as follows: Tyrannosaurus Rex, the tyrant lizard king. They reigned for 25 million years, and we grew 7 of them, the 7 rulers of the island. Unquote. Now, should we take this information as canon? So in theory, we now know at least there are 7 Tyrannosaurus rexes alive. But how many of them did we see within the movies? Whilst it should be mentioned, there are some additional ones that were obviously not part of the original batch, because they're definitely not, well, fully grown, but we can somewhat decipher this later on in this video. But for now, let's follow the timeline of the Tyrannosauruses within this saga. The first Tyrannosaurus that we know of in the Jurassic movie canon is the feathered Tyrannosaurus Rex that we see 65 million years ago, where she faces off against a Giganotosaurus. Now, at this time, we technically don't have a name for this Rex, as it was around the Cretaceous period and not during the current era of Jurassic. But for this video's sake, let's just call it, well, Rexy 1.0. Now, at this point, it should be pretty obvious that Rexy 1.0 was the direct descendant for the Tyrannosaurus that we all know and love, known as Rexy. But a little bit more on her later. Rexy 1.0 did lose the battle against the Giganotosaurus and died there and then due to a snapped neck. Whilst all seemed lost, a mosquito came by and then drank her blood, just before she passed away. This exact same mosquito would later be found and used to create an almost pure breed Tyrannosaurus. But not just any Tyrannosaurus, obviously. Now, quite obviously, this specific mosquito was used to create Rexy, which just so happens to be the next Tyrannosaurus on the timeline. Now, Rexy is obviously the most popular dinosaur in pulp culture reference, with multiple of her roars appearing in different movies, such as Star Wars, Avatar, and many, many more. But within canon, she was actually the very first Tyrannosaurus Rex to have been bred. She was hatched in 1988 and was merely 5 years old in the Jurassic Park movie. After defeating the Velociraptors at the end of this film, she was unfortunately not going to be seen again up until 2015's Jurassic World. However, she was known to have eaten the sick Triceratops seen in Jurassic Park in the year 1994 during the cleanup, and then was later captured by the Hopkins team in the early 2000s to be presented for Jurassic World as the main attraction when it opened in 2005. Then not much is known about her again up until 2015, where we are able to easily identify Rexy by the scars on her neck that were gained in the Velociraptor battle in 1993. After 2015, she is next seen in 2015 to 2016 throughout Camp Cretaceous Seasons 2 and 3. Whilst she only ever appears as a cameo, she definitely causes her fair share of havoc for the campers, and even eats a few more people for good measure as well. After 2016, we don't know anything about her up until 2018, where she appeared in the Blue VR experience, taking on Blue and a Baryonyx as well. And this takes place during the early stages of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. During Fallen Kingdom's opening sequence that takes place in 2016, we see it line up with Camp Cretaceous Season 3 directly. However, back in 2018, she is captured by Wheatley's team on the Arcadia and soon broke out of the Lockwood Manor, after being kept there for some time. And then she appears occasionally throughout the motion comics, before we lead into 2021, where she can be seen in the short film Jurassic World: The Prologue. She rains havoc across some moviegoers in the year of 2021, before soon being captured by the DFW, and then transported over to Biosyn Sanctuary in 2022. She loses out to the Giganotosaurus after fighting over a deer, and then unfortunately gets her rear end handed to her once again by the Giganotosaurus as well, not before waking up from being unconscious and avenging her fallen ancestor and killing the Giganotosaurus. After this, she appears at the end of the movie with 2 more Tyrannosauruses. But the question is, who are they? But well, fun fact, they are the next Tyrannosauruses to appear in this canonical timeline. Moving on to the next 2 Tyrannosauruses in the timeline, bringing our total tally now to 4, we have Buck and Doe, who are mainly known from the movie The Lost World Jurassic Park. Buck and Doe are the first Tyrannosauruses to be documented to have been working as parents within Site B, and would not only stop at nothing to get their baby back, but also be a nuisance to the InGen team later later on. The baby, also known as Junior, which is our 5th Tyrannosaurus Rex, was transported back to the mainland, with the T-Rex Buck following as well. And he completely destroyed portions of San Diego in 1997, and was found to be looking for his baby on the mainland after being tranked by Roland Tembo back on Isla Sorda. Towards the end of the movie, Buck and Doe were transported back to Isla Sorda to live out the rest of their lives in 1997. Buck and Doe were actually part of the original batch of the original 7 Tyrannosaurs that were bred and born on Isla Sorda back in the late 80s. Now, after 1997, we literally know nothing about these animals. They were thought to be still alive, but we have zero confirmation of that, up until we got to see Jurassic World Dominion in 2022. So the 2 Tyrannosaurus Rexes seen at the end of the movie with Rexy are none other than Buck and Doe. So it's actually nice to see that they are still alive after all this time. Although, unfortunately, very close to the end of their lives, just like Rexy. Now, that begs the question, what did ever happen to Junior? Now, obviously, it's not likely he would be chilling with his parents once he grew into an adult, so it's safe to say that he would have definitely left the nest by now. But unfortunately, we do have no information regarding this Tyrannosaurus Rex. Let's just hope that deleted Jurassic Park 3 idea doesn't become canon, because getting killed by, well, a bunch of baby pteranodons does not sound like a good time. Now, speaking of Jurassic Park 3, the next Tyrannosaurus Rex that appears on the timeline is none other than the Bull Rex, that unfortunately lost his life in an awesome and memorable battle against the Spinosaurus. Now, not much is also known about this Tyrannosaurus as well, sadly. There's not a lot of backstory to go off of, and in the film you can clearly see that it's not a fully grown Rex, and I believe it was reported to be around 2 to 3 years old, which explains why he was not as big as Rexy or Buck and Doe at ages 5, but he was also not too small to be an infant. I'd say it's probably a pretty accurate size range for his age. And we also know that because this Rex was smaller and not the right age, that this Rex must have been reproduced by another mating pair on Sorna, just like Junior was. And after this, we have to wait until 2016 before we learn about our 2 pairings of Tyrannosaurus Rexes. These are both Big and Little Edie from Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous Seasons 4 and 5. These 2 Tyrannosaurs are both mother and daughter, and were taken from Isla Sorna and were brought over to Manta Island instead. Now, it's unclear whether or not Big Edie is a Tyrannosaurus that we have previously seen in the franchise, such as Doe. However, for the time being, we only know that it is in fact a separate species of Rex. These 2 Tyrannosauruses are fully grown and live out their days on Sorna. Since they are both classified as mother and daughter, that means one of them was bred in nature, and the other one was most likely one of the original 7 Tyrannosauruses. This means that only Rexy, Buck, Doe, and Big Edie are the ones that we know for a fact are part of those 7. But clearly, Big Edie did have to mate with a male Tyrannosaurus at some point to create Little Edie, whilst it is unclear whether or not this unknown male is the same one that we've seen previously within the franchise. But we do know for a fact that there is a male that mated with Big Edie to make Little Edie. So that means technically we now know 5 of the original Rexes. Big Edie and Little Edie weren't heard about in the timeline up until 2016. Thus, there isn't too much story to them. However, it is definitely worth noting that Big Edie did take on the Spinosaurus from Jurassic Park 3 and ended up losing the fight and almost her life. She quickly recovered from her wounds as the Spinosaurus went on to try and kill her offspring. But luckily for Little Edie, her mother was right around the corner to get sweet revenge on that Spinosaurus real quick. But unfortunately, after this battle, they were never to be seen again. So that means it's unclear whether or not they survived up until the year 2022, just like the Spinosaurus. Should the Dino Tracker website map be anything to go by, there is no evidence of Manta Island in their location, where it should be, which suggests that it may have been blown up between the years 2016 and 2022, which could also answer why we didn't see all of those species on the mainland in 2022, especially Spinosaurus. Either way, these are all the Tyrannosaurus Rexes that we know of in canon, via timeline order: Rexy 1.0, Rexy, Buck, Doe, Junior, Bull, Big Edie, and Little Edie, as well as the father of Little Edie somewhere on Isla Sorna too. But that's all we have for all the Tyrannosaurus Rexes of Jurassic Park and Jurassic World. I hope you enjoyed this video today, and if you did, be sure to smash that like button as hard as a dinosaur, as I like to say, and perhaps consider subscribing if you're new. And I do have one question for all of you. Which one is your favorite Tyrannosaurus from the Jurassic World and Jurassic Park franchise? I'm assuming Rexy is probably going to win this one by a landslide. And if I'm to be honest, Rexy is probably my favorite Tyrannosaurus Rex from this series as well. I mean, it's pretty hard not to be. However, an honorable mention should go to Bull for taking on that Spinosaurus because, well, that doesn't seem to be a very good outcome for any Tyrannosaur day, in the Jurassic world, I say. And be sure to comment below what you think of the stop-motion Rexy project so far. And be sure to share with your dinosaur and monster-loving friends, because there's plenty of more Dinosaur Jurassic World content heading your way, I do say. Because once Rexy is done, I plan on having some, well, hybrid dinosaur mutant showdown fun. So realistically, this project has just begun. So be sure to share this channel today with your friends, I say, so we can grow this claymation community, I do say. And be sure to have your post notifications turned on today so you don't miss Rexy Part 3 that'll soon be heading your way, where we'll be adding all the details to this dinosaur, I say. But now that our Part 2 fun is done, it's time for the build rundown today on Rexy, I do say. Where one could say this dinosaur became more than just a skeleton today, because we added about 3 layers of plasticine clay. But before we added the clay, we did some painting on that skull, I say, which in all honesty is just a lot easier to do it that way before adding the clay. So if you're following along with the project today, be sure to, well, do that step first, I do say. Otherwise, you might regret it later on. I know I've made that mistake in the past, and there's generally an order to, well, making these dolls. Usually because I like to, well, start with stuff that's going to be harder to access first, aka the painting, because it's all basically underneath the layers of clay. And then once you got all your painting done, you can basically start adding on layers of clay. Now the first one I generally like to basically make very thin and ensure that there's no air pockets inside our skeleton, because essentially that is going to be the main foundation holding up your dinosaur other than the skeleton. Then once you have, well, a very malnourished looking dinosaur, it's time to add on muscles. So essentially, it makes it a lot easier to add on those muscle layers once you have a little bit more plasticine clay, but not adding too much to make sure that you can still see all the muscle attachment points on your skeleton, thus giving you a more accurate interpretation of those muscle layers. And then once our workout session was done, we had a little bit of counter shading fun, which means most of the bodywork for this dinosaur is now done today. So the only thing left to do, I say, is add a little bit more details to Rexy, you could say. Hello everyone, my name is Evan, and I like to make stop-motion dinosaurs and monsters. And in this video today, I'm happy to say we are finishing our Jurassic Park Rexy today, I do say. Now, there's a lot of plasticine sculpting to do today, along with some painting, I say, and as I finish this Tyrannosauridae, or cloning Rexy, you could say, we'll be discussing some more scientifically accurate T-Rexes today, I do say. Undoubtedly, the most iconic dinosaur of all time, the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Also known as the Tyrant Lizard King, or in this case, the Tyrant Lizard Queen. Long live Queen Roberta! Or, Rexy, sorry, my bad. Either way, this dinosaur is probably known across the planet as the most terrifying animal that ever walked on planet Earth, with the strongest bite of any terrestrial organism, with a force of 35,000 newtons, which is more than enough to easily crush a car. With 60 sharp conical teeth that can grow up to 12 inches, it's no surprise that this creature has left a lasting impersonation on the imagination of those who lay their eyes on it. As one of the most earlier dinosaurs ever discovered, it's been tantalizing audiences ever since its first film appearance, with the first film appearance being a stop-motion film called The Ghost of Slumber Mountain, which is a short film directed by special effects pioneer Willis O'Brien. And whilst this film may look crude to most people these days, just imagine what audiences would have thought over 100 years ago in 1918. This film would have been nothing like they've ever seen before. Then the T-Rex made another appearance in Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World in 1925, and then the big one, pun intended, in 1933 with King Kong, where a T-Rex battled with the big ape. Or for modern day terms, I think that would be considered the V-Rex. I think it's pretty easy to see why people fell in love with this gigantic beast. It reached new heights of popularity in 1993. Where it was much bigger and more realistic than ever before seen. This showed the tyrant lizard queen at her very best. Jurassic Park revolutionized how we should look at Tyrannosaurus Rex and many other dinosaurs. Not only to do with the appearance, but mainly stance. Because basically up until this point, Tyrannosaurus Rex was always standing upright like a kangaroo. But that was changed to leaning forward like a bird. Outside the exaggerated size, this was the most realistic depiction of the Rex to this date. But since then, things have obviously changed. For example, we do have research that says that Tyrannosaurus Rex was actually a scavenger, which is still up for debate. But given the fact that there is fossil evidence, with hadrosaurs in particular having Tyrannosaurus Rex teeth lodged inside their tails, and these wounds did heal over time, which tells a bit of a story if you think about it. More than likely this hadrosaurus was running away from a Tyrannosaurus Rex when it got bit, meaning that it was alive while being chased, so therefore kind of debunks that theory, at least in my honest opinion. I would say Tyrannosaurus Rex is more likely an opportunistic hunter. But not only that, to defend the argument for it being a scavenger, there's a debate out there saying that it was incredibly slow, reaching a maximum speed of only 16 kilometers an hour. Far less impressive than what you see in the movies. However, the opposing side of the argument basically for that is that most of the other dinosaurs that were around at the time weren't exactly fast either. And there's also a theory out there that it would actually die if it fell over, essentially being crushed by its own weight. Basically putting into question as to whether or not the Tyrannosaurus Rex actually deserved the title of the Tyrant Lizard King. But some newer research has come out that not only reminds us why this thing was so loved and feared, but how it might actually be more terrifying than we initially thought. A study conducted by Dr. Mallon and Dr. David Hone of Queen Mary University in London used some computer modeling software to assess the population for T-Rex based on living alligators, chosen for their large size and close relation to dinosaurs. Take into consideration factors such as population size, growth rates, lifespan, and incompletion of fossil records. Researchers said that their findings suggest that there may have been larger dinosaurs out there that have yet to be discovered. A study published in the Journal of Science estimated that each generation of Tyrannosaur consisted of 20,000 individuals. And out there were 125,000 generations in the 2.5 million years that they existed, which means between the years of 68 to 65.5 million years ago, an estimated 1.7 to 2.5 billion T-Rexes roamed the planet Earth. So that leaves us the question, how many individuals thus far have been found fossilized? And the number is a whopping 42. That's right, only 42 out of 2.5 billion. That's the equivalent of taking a quarter of the Earth's population of humans and taking 42 of them. That's the largest of that group. and that's how big they could all get. It's said that the largest T-Rex fossils probably fall into the 99th percentile, representing the top 1% of body size, and that bigger could still be found. Dr. Hone stated, "Some isolated bones and pieces certainly hint at there being larger individuals, than for which we currently have skeletons for. So maybe the T-Rex in Jurassic World isn't as far-fetched as we originally thought. But just how big could this thing get?" Currently, the world's largest Tyrannosaurus Rex is Scotty from Saskatchewan, who is estimated to weigh about 8.8 tons, with a length of 13.11 meters, or 43 feet, which is already above the current average of 12 meters, or 40 feet. However, the research suggests that the Tyrannosaurus Rex was a whopping 70% heavier, weighing roughly 15 tons, compared to the 8.8 that it currently is. And not only this, it's estimated to be about 25% longer, at 15 meters instead of the current 12, and standing in at almost 5 meters tall. That is nearly as tall as a giraffe. So to put that into perspective, that's even larger than the 13.5 meter Rexy that we saw in the Jurassic movies. This puts into question everything that we have learned about this creature up to this date, begging us the question, how did this thing move? How did this thing hunt? How did it even support its own weight? 15 tons on only 2 legs is no small feat, pun intended. With the increase in mass and muscle size, it can be also correlated to an increase in bite force, meaning this bone crusher, feared across the world, could have had an even stronger bite than previously thought. Dr. Mallon says it's fun to think about a 15-ton T-Rex, but the implications are also interesting from a biomechanical and ecological standpoint. With this research, what we are presented with is a tank of a species that had the potential to grow even larger and even more terrifying than what we even saw in the Jurassic Park films. But it's worth remembering that this study speculates the anomalies, the ones that really stand out from the average, like the random lions that are discovered every now and then that are like 150 pounds heavier than the rest. But that's not the only revelation, for the Rex isn't the only dinosaur in which this science is applied. This study applies to literally every species of dinosaur. For example, think about how large the Patagotitan is, the biggest dinosaur that scientists have literally ever discovered, weighing 57 tons with an insane length of 37.5 meters. So could this thing get even bigger? The possibilities are endless and unfathomably terrifying. We may never really know the extent of the truth. We may never really know how big these animals could really get. We would have to excavate fossils at the current rate for another 1,000 years to ever find an animal that is in the top 99.9% of body size. But for now, this research gives us a glimpse into how opposing the prehistoric era really was. So I just want to thank you all quickly for joining me once again on this scientific adventure. This type of stuff has personally always fascinated me, and I've always been a huge enthusiast of dinosaurs ever since I can personally remember. To the point where one of my first dream jobs was a paleontologist, and I believe I was saying that at probably 6 to 5 years old, so yes, I was commonly referred to as the dinosaur kid at school. And it means a lot to me that every single one of you who support me and this dream by perhaps becoming a full-time YouTuber someday where I can basically just discuss and talk about and make dinosaurs and monsters all the time. That would be really cool, but we're slowly chipping away at that, I do say. If you want more dino science videos, such as this one, be sure to smash that like button as hard as a dinosaur today. And make sure Rexy is done proud, I do say. Because I'll admit, this project did take a little bit longer than expected because, well, I tend to be a bit of a perfectionist, and I wanted to make sure that I did the best representation of Rexy possible in a 3-week time span. So be sure to share this video around with your dinosaur-loving friends, and perhaps consider subscribing if you're new today, because there will soon be a dinosaur battle heading your way. So stay tuned for the photo count that will soon be heading your way, where one might say a certain T-Rex will be facing off a mutant, I say. But I'm not going to spoil, well, anything just yet. But don't you fret, because there will be more clues, I say, in today's glamour shots, I do say. And also, if you enjoyed this content today, be sure to comment below what you think of Project Rexy. And for me personally, I think this is probably one of my favorite dinosaurs that I've made thus far. So let me know what you think in the comments below. And I know as of recently, we've had a lot of requests for the Spinosaurus. So for all of you Spino fans out there, I'm happy to say that we definitely will be making a Spinosaurus next. Now, my only question at this point is, do we make the Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus, or do we make the modern day Jurassic World Rebirth Spinosaurus? Now, personally, I think I'm kind of leaning towards maybe the newer one, because that is a little bit more scientifically accurate. However, the Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus is kind of the reason why I love Spinosaurus so much. So we'll do a little bit of a casting in the comment section. And one thing I should probably mention before people start going off in the comments, what I mean by next is that Spinosaurus will be coming after the next animation. But now that that's all said and done, making this T-Rex was definitely a lot of fun. And I really hope you enjoyed this video today, because there is more dinosaur content to soon be heading your way. So enjoy the glamour shots of Rexy today, I do say. Thanks for sticking around to the very end of the video. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the content, comment below what you think, share with your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing if any. And anyway, that's it from me. Till next time, take it easy.